Mulls, Andrew Mulligan, welcome to my podcast.
Dom, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Mate, thanks for coming on. And I've done so much research, and this is only the second long-form podcast about yourself that you've ever done.
I know. Yeah, it's strange. It's cool to be invited, and I'm honoured, and also it's a little terrifying talking about yourself when you talk to other people about their lives and what they do and interview people, and to be interviewed, it's like, I feel like I had to do research myself. Actually, you're probably going to bring some stuff and go, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Well, that does happen. For me, I find it's a balancing act between preparing enough and over preparing. Because if you're I don't want to ask you questions and I already know the answer, and I'm like, well, that's the wrong answer, Mulls. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
You still want to have that natural sort of level of curiosity. But this is going to be fun. I'm really excited.
I'm excited too. Thank you.
You in a year or a period that has been like crazy for New Zealand media, like you're one of the most employed people. Do you feel bad about having all the jobs?
I do feel a little bit guilty. Yeah. I don't want to say a survivor, but I'm lucky enough to be in position to do what I do. And there are a lot of people out there who I would say are a lot better and a lot more talented than me who haven't had the run of success lately, which is it is terrible out there. It really is. My wife runs a small business marketing company. And there's just so much in retail and that e-commerce space that's just, you just don't know the half of it sometimes. It doesn't even make the headlines, and people are they're in a bad way. So yeah, I'm, touch wood, lucky enough to do what I do. I'm very privileged.
Yeah, we'll run through that list of jobs, but knowing you like reasonably well and having worked with you in the past, I've got a theory. It's because you do a good job. When you get the opportunity, you do a good job.
Yeah, thank you.
And also like you're nice and you're polite and you're reliable and you're easy to work with.
It goes a long way. It's not like I don't 100%. Set out to be like that. It's just I've been brought up very well by my mum and my dad, so I think that's where it's come from. So, but you see, as you know, you've seen a lot of people come and go in the industry, and you see how those people act, and you sort of think to yourself, well, yeah, you need to treat people like that. You need to talk about people like that. So yeah, it's it goes a long way. Niceties.
Yeah, 100%. So basketball commentary, you've done a ton of that with the Breakers.
Yeah.
Rugby commentary as well. Super Rugby mainly.
Yeah, no, I did a little bit of last couple of years. I've done some NPC. They were short last year with the Rugby World Cup, because everybody was involved with that. So they really plunged the depths of their talent pool at Sky to do commentary, and I really enjoyed that. And I did a little bit this year as well, where it managed to squeeze it into the old schedule. So I really enjoyed it. It was terrifying. It was terrifying starting basketball like in 2009. And eventually, like anything, it's not 10,000 hours, but it's the same thing. You do more and more of it regularly, and you get better and better. You're never great at it, but you do well. Rugby is like, there's so many names. There's like at least 30 on the field, and there are another 16 waiting to get on.
Yeah, not the interchange.
And by the time the bench comes on, you've just gotten used to the loose head prop, and what they do and where they're from, and then suddenly they're off, and now you're like, far out. What's that guy again? And your notes are all
Yeah, something I guess most people wouldn't think about is the level of prep that goes into that, to knowing the names. Like I don't know what your technique is. Do you write them out phonetically, some of them, and
some of them you do,
syllable by syllable?
Yeah, you do. You have to, because then you need it to flow, and you practice, and you ask around for the inflections and the correct pronunciation. And sometimes because of the pace of the call and the way you're talking and you're trying to get something out, you stuff it up, and you don't mean to. It's just, unfortunately, you don't want to be a meme, but sometimes you cook it. You absolutely cook it. And if you can acknowledge that you've cooked it, I think that goes a long way to trying to correct it later. So yeah, the names will get you.
Speaking of memes, we will get to that. Other jobs you've got, the Crowd Goes Wild, which has been on air for like 18 years, and you've been there since day one.
Yeah.
Olympic Games coverage. How many games cycles have you been to? How many summer and winter?
Summer, I've been to one winter, and I've been to now 3 summer games and a couple of Commonwealth games as well. So yes, 6 all up this year.
That's so cool.
6.
Breakfast radio as well on the incredible Rock Breakfast Show. How long have you been on the Rock?
We worked it out. All up, it's been 10 years on the Rock, on the Morning Rumble. And there was a hiatus there where I went to Radio Sport from about 3 years, I think, upon memory. And then I came back to the Rock as well. So yeah, that was a great learning curve doing Radio Sport.
Yeah, was it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you quickly became you went from one brand, which was, as you know, when you're at the edge, one of the stronger brands, morning shows, ratings wise, commercially, the company is all for. Whereas you go to Radio Sport and it was like the ugly stepchild of ZB. Like it was the barnacle on the good ship Hosking, you know? And they never really, it was in its heyday, it was great when it had Devlin and it had Vici. It was an absolute beast because it was nothing like it. There was no one talking sport like that on radio. There were sports shows, yeah, I get that. But there was nothing like Devlin or Vici in their, manic ways saying some of the hottest takes that people have ever heard back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, sport was funny back then, eh? It was, I was reflecting on this the other day, just with what you've done in sport, and in particular, like Crowd Goes Wild. Like, sport used to be like a real serious, angry sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, calling for heads for roll.
Oh, sack the board, Dom. Yeah. Sack the board. Get rid of them. And it's like, what's the CEO up to?
Yeah.
He must go. She has to go. It's like, bang, you're fired. I fired you. It's in my comment section. You're all gone.
Yeah, we only beat Italy by 20. We should be angry.
Yeah, that was a poor performance.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done any better, but I'm sitting here telling you you should have.
Yeah. What else? Oh, the Rebel Sport Voice. How long have you been the Rebel Sport Voice for? 10 years?
13, I think.
Fuck.
So 2011, I started that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. I had been working at ZM very briefly with Jason Reeves, and he and I did like a Saturday morning breakfast show part-time. And somebody at the agency rang ZM looking for me, and I hadn't been there for probably like 5 years, but they must have remembered that I'd done this Saturday show. And then they rang ZM, and Clint Roberts, who knows my wife, rang Emma and said, hey, Em, just so you know, someone's rung through and they're looking for your husband or your fiancé. And they want to know something about voicing something. And that's sort of just how it came out. It's very New Zealand, how it came about.
Such a small community.
After
After Clint Roberts tried to suggest himself for the role. No, I'm sure he didn't do that. Oh, now the latest feather in your cap. You're on a New Zealand safety video, which I think is sort of like peak New Zealand
It is, isn't
celebrity in a way.
It's like I've skipped Shortland Street. I've jumped the queue.
Well, you did do a year on New Zealand's Got Talent, though, with Jason Reeves.
I did. I certainly did. It was just 1 year as well.
Not enough talent.
Not enough talent. No, it was like, it wasn't rhetorical, the question. It was definitely answerable. The safety video came about in the middle of the year, and it was top secret, because there's always a lot of interest with Air New Zealand just as a company from mainly the Herald and stuff, but also New Zealanders, we have so much ownership. They're like the All Blacks of the commercial world, Air New Zealand. And I was asked, and honestly, my first reaction was, fuck no, I just don't want it to be lame. And then I explained the premise without saying that it involved Stephen Adams, but they were like, and it's somebody who's kind of in your field, but an international sports star. I was like, well, that makes kind of, okay. And then thankfully, it's obviously he's the star of it. And know Stephen a little bit, he would never do something that's lame. And so if he's on board, then yeah, it's awesome. It's great.
Yeah, what is your relationship with Stephen Adams like? What have you had to do with him?
I've had professionally a little bit to do. Whenever he's back, he doesn't do any media. He's not interested in doing any interviews. He doesn't have to do any interviews. He just wants to come back and hang out with his whānau, hang out on his big property, I think, go hunting, and then run these amazing camps that give kids the opportunity to see Stephen Adams and play basketball and practice basketball, which is awesome. So from Stephen, I did like a Foot Locker thing with him when he was first drafted, and I think Adidas bought him out, and Foot Locker bought him out when he was after the draft, but before the season started. And it was a Q&A session, and that's where I met him at Queen Street Foot Locker, and it was like I was frothing so much because I knew how big it was, because he was not only was he drafted into the NBA, but he was like a lottery pick, which is a big deal, which is where the worst teams get the best picks. And he was high up on the board there. And so he was drafted by OKC, and then since then, I've just had little bits and pieces to do with him, and every time he's always been good. And he remembers Crowd Goes Wild as a kid growing up and watching it, which really helps. Because like, oh yeah, you're the fella from Crowd Goes Wild, like Crowd Goes Wild, and do press conferences, and then he'd see the mic flash and go, Crowd Goes Wild's here. That's cool. And I was like, that's gold for us, like, and for obviously me as the presenter with Mark Richardson, and so. Every time then, he's always been he's a lovely guy. He's awesome. He was such a pleasure to work with, and everyone around him in that safety video, and he was there for a lot longer than I was because they had to do multi-day shoot, and it's such a big production, but he was awesome with everybody.
How do they get him over the line? Like, he doesn't need a payday.
No, he doesn't. And I'd speculate that he got quite a lot of contracts because New Zealand goes direct to Houston and he plays for the Rockets. So I imagine that there's probably for tax purposes, I probably shouldn't have said that.
He's going to be gold elite for life.
Yeah, maybe. It just keeps rolling, doesn't it? Yeah.
What about because Valerie. So Tom Sainsbury's on the in-flight thing. So is Valerie.
She's awesome. I love her. I've got so much respect for her as an athlete and as a mother coming back and being an athlete and being a medalist, and I love her. Because
that Olympic stuff's funny, isn't it? Because you're catching people when they're bewildered and they're just in the. I've had Finn Butcher on the podcast, and he talked about like clambering over fences to try and like get to you after winning his gold medal. So you're getting people that are elated, maybe surprised that they've won gold medals, or people that are shocked because they've underperformed. It's the lowest point of their life.
Man, it's like you've got this moment. You're in this mix zone, and sometimes Sky pay for it because we've got a lot of great athletes, and you pay a set fee to basically the broadcasting service arm of the International Olympic Committee, and it costs a lot of money, and you're at the prime spot. And we were like, say for the rowing in Paris, we were right beside the BBC, and we had Sir Matthew Pinsent, who is this legendary British rower, and it's like so intimidating. He's like, they're being quiet and respectful as you interview the Kiwi rowers, but he's listening to your questions. And I'm not a rowing expert. I've done my research, but there's no way I'm a rowing expert. And he's listening. I'm like, fuck, please. and then like he would look at me afterwards and he'd go, just with a nod. I was like, oh, okay, good. But then I'd just ask him. I'd say, is this a good question? How does this work? What would you be in that situation? Which you're lucky to rub shoulders in that respect. But you've got this tiny moment where you see them walking towards you. And you've got to read their body language. You've got to understand like the time they rode or the competition they were up against and how you try and get a read on where they're going to be at. So the first question or two is really exploratory, where you try and get a gauge of how they're feeling right at that moment. And you genuinely do mean the best when you go, how are you feeling? And a lot of people go, I don't know how they're feeling. Oh, they're pissed off. I mean, they could be. I had a terrible experience in London. It was poolside, and Lauren Boyle, one of our great swimmers, I think it was the 800 metres, and she finished fourth, and she came out of the pool crying. And this was like, it was about to be peak Katie Ledecky, she's just that incredible American swimmer who just smashed 1,500 metres and 800 metres out. And Lauren was crying, and I was like, oh, you must be so gutted. Those tears, you must be so disappointed. You've got so close. She was like, no, I'm so happy. I just smashed my PB. Oh, fuck.
Misread that one. Oh, but you're not to know. And you've got such a short window to get it right. Like, what is it, 90 seconds, 60 seconds?
Yeah, especially these days when it's like you're basically going live. Back in London, you're basically, if you're not live, you are just feeding it back. And most of the times it's not live. It is repackaged and repurposed for the coverage. But yeah, it really is. You've got to have your wits about you. It's not that. It is terrifying.
Did you do Amy Fisher at the Paris Games this year?
No, I didn't do Amy Fisher. Right. No, I think that might have been Kimberly Downs.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Kim about that.
Everyone was talking about this massive duel, like Lisa Carrington and Amy Fisher.
Yeah.
And, Lisa won gold and Amy got fourth. And I just can't imagine like how she felt at the time or how you'd handle that as a journalist. Terrible situation for all.
Oh, it is. And it's the mark of the journo, the reporter, to ask the right questions and pick up the cues. But it's also the quality of the athlete to be able to compose themselves and have to encapsulate what just happened in a 4-year cycle. And she'd done so well. She'd beaten Lisa Carrington a couple of times, which very few people have done. since London. Even before that, Lisa Carrion and Dame Lisa is just obviously an absolute weapon, a goat in a boat. And for Amy, for her basically not to really, unfortunately, fire a shot and finish the way it did, it's just, really tough. It's a tough situation. It is compelling TV. Unfortunately, it's really good, and it's also really tough at the same time.
Oh, it's drama, isn't it? But it's someone's actual life and career and 4 years of their work that's down the tube. It sucks.
And that's why I really had this thing with when I did the rowing, and for Finn. Finn's different because he's just this great Kiwi battler who has done so well in a sport that was brand new to the Olympics. No one had heard anything about it. I was looking at YouTube and had a Slovakian crew beside me explain this is obviously massive, like handball's massive in Europe and it's at the Olympics. And we're like, what?
What is this?
But rowers are just, New Zealand rowing it punches above its weight. There's massive crews, massive programs out of the UK. And for them, their 4-year cycle has so much expectation and weight put on them just by rowing New Zealand and their friends and family, because they all live in Cambridge. Mostly, they'll train there. And they suddenly thrust in front of, like, at times, there were millions of people watching in New Zealand, and they kind of felt like they have to explain themselves, basically, as to why it happened or why it didn't happen. And it's their one opportunity. And that's what I've learned over the years, is that you have to actually deal with your conveying their story. You're not just trying to ask why, what went wrong. You're actually helping them get their story across in a short space, a short amount of time.
Yeah, because I suppose if they have sports psychs or mindset coaches, like one thing they get taught is not to entertain the possibility of losing.
Exactly.
So it's like they can't have a pre-scripted answer about what happens when they shit the bed.
Yeah, and when they do lose or didn't hit their expectations, they are quickly processing how it went wrong. And you're right, that mindset it hasn't entered the equation until right there and then. And so, it's trying to not to be offensive, but then also find out what they felt like it didn't work for them on the day. And it can be anything, honestly. They might wake up and they have no idea, but they've got a stomach bug. And then we saw that with Mahe Drysdale. He rode literally his guts out. And I think it was Beijing. And he just, he still did it. And we wouldn't know that. We didn't know that. And it might be something that they still haven't disclosed and never will disclose, that just they don't want to tell anyone they weren't feeling 100%, because, well, how can you not feel 100%? It's the final. You're rowing for gold or you're racing for gold. Why haven't you not timed that? It's incredibly hard to do.
Yeah, well, I think this is like radio sport when it was in its heyday that you were talking about. I remember Hamish Carter getting in trouble because I think it was maybe the Sydney Games.
Yeah.
He underperformed, and afterwards he goes, I just woke up this morning and I just knew it wasn't going to be my day. And the talkback was outraged.
Oh, that is a red flag to a bull. That is vintage radio sport. Yeah. You can just see the host going like this. Perfect. Yeah. The phones light up like an All Blacks loss. It is the easiest shift. You put your feet up. Answer the call, Tony and Timaru. What do you think went wrong? They didn't push in the scrums. You see the loose head, he was angling in too much and we're getting pinged. He's always been like a piece of chewing gum.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Fuck, these stories are great. You've got so many interesting insights. But we'll rein it back in and we'll go back to the early years of the Andrew Mulligan story.
Oh, yeah, sure, sorry.
So you wanted to be a cop originally?
Yeah, I thought.
What age are we talking?
This would be like when I was like 11, 12. And it was, there were cops in the All Blacks. Like there was Murray Pearce and then there was John Gallagher. And they were cops in Wellington. And I thought that was pretty cool. And I actually went on a tour of Wellington Police Station and they both took me round because back then my dad, who was in radio, and so was Mum, he just had a connection and they took me around. I remember them fingerprinting me. And it was like very cool. And then I remember my mum telling me, you're not going to be a cop because you've got asthma and you've got a lazy eye. That had to be corrected when I was 2 years old. And I was like, oh, okay. All right, fair enough then. So that's where that came from, yeah. So it was a very young age.
But you never, like to me, it seems like you never had a chance. It was always going to be media. So your mum, radio legend Jenny, retired last year after 52 years in radio. What was she in sales? No.
She was in sales, yeah. She started out in Dunedin as a technician. So she was there, I think she started when she was 17, 18. in NZBC as it was back then, and that was in Dunedin, and then met Dad and they moved to Wellington, and they started a family, my sister and I, and then Dad kept going, and then she went away from radio for a while and sold microwaves in a store called Microwave Specialist. So there's no Lowell Leeming or, Heathcote's or anywhere, the specialist microwave stores.
That's all they sold.
That's all they sold. All of them. JVC, Sharp, Panasonic, all the big brands.
National. Where the National?
Yeah, National.
The Genius it was called.
The National Genius. I think they still made the Genius, actually, Panasonic. That's where National went. So, but then she would do cooking classes and show people how to make ginger crunch in the microwave and how it's so versatile and stuff. And there would be people who would stop her on the street in Wellington and say, "Oh, you sold me a microwave." I literally think she sold a microwave to half of Wellington. She was world famous in Wellington for selling microwaves. And then she went back to sales and briefly at More FM before it was at MediaWorks. It was an independent. And then she'd been at NZME for a very long time. And they were great to her, in Wellington.
And you guys both won radio awards last year.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
Is that the first time that's ever...
That's
it's got to be a first. That's really special. It's really cool.
She got services to broadcast. I think it was services to broadcast. And there's the big one that Mike Regal got, and then there was services. But she was recognised for her tenure. And the great people at NZME Wellington put that together. Her boss and friend, former boss and friend, Vanya, and her team did a great job nominating her. And it was very cool. That was like her first radio awards, I think, ever, maybe in a very long time that she'd been to, and they flew her up and stuff. That was very cool.
That's so special. And what are your early memories of your dad's career? Because he was doing like basketball commentary and stuff at the NZBC, eh?
Yes, he was, So he'd do Saints games, Wellington Saints games, and that was their heyday. That was where...
Exchequer Saints.
Yeah, the Exchequer Saints. That was when they had Kenny McFadden and Kerry Boagney, and they were, honestly, they'd be like, in the show buildings there in Newtown, they'd have 2,500 people, and it was loud and it was bright and it was colourful and it was just exciting. It was very different to going to like Athletic Park and watching Wellington Lions play in the National Provincial Championship. It just caught my imagination. And he would take me and I'd just roam around, walk around. It's the 80s. You could do anything, and that was so cool. Him and Terry Orchard called the games. I actually heard Terry Orchard on the radio the other day, or wee while ago, earlier this year, and I was like, oh my God, Terry Orchard, what a blast from the past. He was talking to Jason Pine on ZB, and it was cool. It was great. That's where, but he would also bring home, because no one really wanted to read it, the Sports Illustrated would be air-mailed to his office, and no one wanted to read it. And I was like, because back then there were two newspapers. There was the Dominion and the Evening Post in Wellington, and, that's where you got your information from. But this American colour magazine of all these amazing photographs and these great articles, and that really got my love of basketball and this cemented it. And they had all these Nike ads in it, and there was Michael Jordan, and he was on the cover like every 3 issues. It was like a cover with Michael Jordan on it. You learn about Muhammad Ali and all the stuff written about these amazing athletes that there was nothing, you couldn't watch these athletes, you couldn't hear anything about these athletes back then in New Zealand.
When was this? Like early 90s? Late 80s?
It was very late 80s, probably like 1990, 91 onwards. Yeah. And it was just, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, pre-internet. Kids can't remember what it's like. America may as well have been the moon at that point.
The only thing that people remembered about America was their grandparents telling them how much the Yanks annoyed them when they came here because they touched up their grandma. Because they went on dates to the war, World War II.
Yeah. So is that where the love of basketball came from?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was. And then slowly there was NBA programming on TVNZ, and then I think when TV3 launched, they had some they had NBA action as well, and they presented games, and there were highlights late at night. They'd get the VCR and try and work out how to set the timer. And then obviously it just became easier and easier to watch games as the internet slowly progressed through our society.
Fuck, those timers on VHS were so hard to figure out.
Complicated.
Even with the G-code one, which was supposed to make it easy with the pen and the barcode, that was impossible as well.
Remember the G-code? G-code was supposed to be revolutionary. It was like
What the fuck?
binary numbers. Yeah.
Yeah, so your dad passed away 8 years ago.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that?
That was really. It wasn't a shock to me.
Was he unwell? Was it an illness? Or?
He wasn't unwell. He basically had a massive cardiac event on the way to a rugby game, and he was in the car with our neighbour, their neighbour, and their kids, and it was really unfortunate because he had this heart attack in the drive down, and our neighbour Andrew had to pull him out of the car and perform CPR and and there were bystanders, bystanders, trying to help. Thankfully, Wellington Free Ambulance turned up and they took him to hospital, and it was too late. Basically, it was just one of those big events, and he was on the life support for a few days, and that was a tough decision for Mum and us, my sister and I. So they were like, no, he's lost too much oxygen to the brain, so he's not going to come back. Sorry, so we had to, flip the switch. Unfortunately, yeah.
How old was he?
Yeah, her dad was about to turn 73, so he was 72. So it was 2017. He was born in 44. Yeah, so he's 72.
It's fucking young.
Yeah, he'd already had about 5 years earlier went in for stents, and then they opened him up and he had a quadruple bypass instead of getting the stents put in his heart. So yeah, he was on the way basically. Unfortunately, he tried to make it a few health corrections, but it didn't quite work.
Too little, too late.
I think so. Yeah.
Was he a smoker or
no? It wasn't a it wasn't a smoker. Just a New Zealand male that would try if things got bad, would go to the doctor eventually, but it was stubborn in the terms of not really listening to his family, telling him to make better health choices, and would do better health choices, but then would revert back to type, unfortunately. So, yeah, I always say it's a great reminder for me and teaches me to be more open about your health struggles and make changes and be responsible, because you never know when it's going to happen, and get your blood pressure checked regularly when you're hit a certain age, and, do all the screenings that you're supposed to do and check in with your GP and, make sure that you're basically on the right path. You never know when it's going to strike you down.
Yeah, how was that for you?
It was tough, man. It was tough. It was tough for Mum because she was just in the family.
She alone in Wellington?
Yeah. So she still lives in our house, and it's taken Mum a long time to deal with it. Her work was great. My sister and her partner Ryan are great. They had to pick up the pieces after the normal bereavement and the funeral and all that took place. I was actually in Dunedin at a All Blacks game, and I got the call from my sister, and she said, "Dad's had a big heart attack, and I don't think it's good." And so I had to leave the All Blacks Test match because I was doing the in-game fronting. I had to tell people from New Zealand Rugby, and they were great. They were like, "Oh yeah, you have to go." So had to get a flight from Dunedin. Luckily, before the game started, the last flight out of Dunedin going to Wellington. And got there and then went and saw him, and the people in ICU there in Wellington Hospital were great. But you just see them, the breathing being done for him. It's just I don't wish that on anyone, and unfortunately a lot of people do have that in their lives, and it's really tough. Yeah.
So you didn't get to have a final profound or poignant conversation.
No.
Can you remember what your last chat was? Was it just some inane text exchange?
Yeah.
What was your relationship like?
Yeah, it was good. It was really good.
Sports chat or?
Yeah, sports chat. I remember the Lions tour was there that year, and then in Wellington, the second test, it was terrible weather, and I checked in with the people at New Zealand Rugby, and I said, because it was the Lions, there was something different about the post-match. And they were like, "We don't need you for the post-game." And I was like, "That's pretty shitty weather. I might just go home and watch the second half up at home with Dad." And I was glad I did, because I think that was pretty much the last time I saw him. And that would have been July And when he passed away, it was late August. And so,
Wow.
yeah. So that was
Man.
pretty.
I got goosebumps.
Yeah, that was. I don't really remember the last thing. So you really got to take a moment and go, when those moments are, you always got to check in with mum and make sure that they're okay and reconnect as much as you can, because you never know. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the downside or the flip side of like great love, isn't it? It's great loss. And I'm 51. My old man's still alive. He's in Wellington, but he's in his late 70s. And realistically, like I probably see him like once or twice a year for a couple of hours at a time. And yes, I saw something on Instagram. It was like if you work out like how many years they've got left and how many more visits you're going to have and how many more hours, it's actually maybe you put more care and attention into these visits.
I know, and that's the thing. Mum comes up all the time, which is really good because she loves seeing our two boys, and she's helped us out over the last year as well. And we haven't been down enough, but we're going down for Christmas, which is great. So we're really looking forward to that. But yeah, when you start adding it up and looking at that, you go, oh shit, yeah, that's not much. It's not a lot of time.
Yeah, how's she doing? You must feel, whenever you think about your mum, like, do you feel like guilty that you're not there enough?
100%, yeah. And she's amazing. She's an amazing woman. She's great with the kids. She's so helpful. She's like, old. She's very young for her age. She still does yoga. She still goes swimming. She still does walks. She still remains very active, and she's still social as well. And I think that those are the keys to old age. She really sets a great example. She loved working. Like, she loved being in this industry. There's a lot of young people, and the young people still check in with her. Even though she's retired, she still catches up with them. And when I say young, they're like in their 30s and 40s. But for them to still want to, connect is...
It speaks volumes.
It does speak volumes. And so that really... It's so important when you're in your old age is to still be active in a contributing member of society, basically, and still being a part of it rather than just regressing and just clock watching, which is probably as some people, I think, do.
Yeah, but it takes effort to do that, though, eh?
It does.
It'd be easy for your mum just to like lock herself up and sort of mope around a bit, but it takes a real effort to do the alternative.
Yeah.
You spoke about your dad. I don't know when it was, but there's an article online about you speaking about him on The Rock. We'll get into this, but you guys have done a tremendous amount of work in the mental health space. In particular for I Am Hope and Gumboot Friday. It's phenomenal that you can do the top 5 fart jokes. That's the thing I heard. I heard yesterday.
Yeah.
And then raise like $250,000 or $500,000 for I Am Hope. And you talked about losing your dad and the mental health realizations that you got. From that. Like, what were they? What sort of impact did that have on your mental health?
Like I said, it was just sort of, I felt like, Dad won't be here for a long time after the stents were supposed to go in. It became a quadruple bypass. And so I think I just repressed it, but I felt like, get used to that phone call. So when that phone call came from my sister, I knew, I was like, yep. That's the one. That's the phone call. So, and I think that actually helped my grieving because I'd already locked away that was going to be a thing, which is, I don't know, that's probably not what therapists say that you should do, but it's what I did. And so I've dealt with it that way. But in terms of like being able to speak about it on the radio, just there's so many people who have been in those situations that reach out and touch you in a way where you're privileged to be in a radio situation where you'll get these messages. It might not be on the text machine or on air, but it's through other avenues, DMs, whatever, which has been really cool. We're very lucky at The Rock because they appreciate the fart jokes, but then they're amazing as a listenership. They gather around each other and they help causes. And I think over the years they've actually, Morning Rumble, and it's driven by Bryce Casey, who's done a phenomenal job of just unfortunately having the tragedy within his family and his friends that he's seen it way too many times, certainly more than I have, and he's used that to raise, and I think it's up to 1.3 million over the years as the show with Gumboot Fridays raised that amount of money, which is great, which is all on the listener, which is cool.
It's incredible, and it's incredible that you guys have got that relationship with the audience where they allow you to do both.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be very, very exhausting. Probably a short-lived career, like from your own making, if it was just fart jokes.
Yeah, it would be.
You want a bit more substance.
Yeah.
How's your mental health been?
It's been good. Yeah, it's been challenging. COVID and that was pretty challenging for everyone, and then the last few years for media has been really challenging. Obviously, but my mental health is really good. It's been hard for my wife this year. She's had some health challenges herself. They found a tear in her brain, and I think a lot of people have it walking around. But she went in during COVID, and it might have been one of the Delta or the Omicron waves. But she tested positive for COVID, and then she, like one night in the middle of the night, she collapsed in the bathroom, and I rang Healthline. They were great, and I told them what had happened, that she'd collapsed, and they were like, "Oh, we've already rung an ambulance. There'll be one there in 5 minutes." And this was like 3:30 in the morning, and I was like, she's not that bad. And what had happened is that she'd basically had these headaches, which we thought was COVID, but it was actually a brain tear. And so they did a CT scan, and weirdly, they were like, "Where have you been? Have you been overseas?" And it was when you could travel, but you couldn't really travel. And they said, "Oh, you've got the original COVID. These symptoms are the original COVID. We're not going to do, it doesn't matter, we're not going to do the bloods or whatever to really find out what it is, but you've got the original COVID." It's like, wow, the OG COVID, not great, but respect, not the Omi or not the Delta. And that was a time when it was the flu was getting everybody, and they said, just please, as an aside, get the flu jab, because there's not many COVID cases in here. There's all the flu, because it's just, obviously we'd done the ISO, and then flu came back in when we let people back in the country, and it just got people. But they did the CT scan, they found a small tear, and a friend of hers, who there's a beautiful mural of, by the Morningside rail crossing there as you go to towards like Briscoe's and Rebel Sport on the right, and there's Morningside Tavern in Auckland, and there's a beautiful mural of Eno, and Eno is a wonderful, beautiful man, and was a great artist, and he just dropped dead one day on the forecourt of a service station with a brain aneurysm, and that was it. And it was like, she was just like, oh my God, this could happen to me. So they did a CT scan. They said, come back in 12 months and we'll see if it's growing. We'll do an MRI. They did an MRI and they said, look, it is growing. It's not at a rapid rate, thankfully, but we need to put a stent in your head. And then so that was booked in, and that happened earlier this year. And she had this stent put in and didn't really tell anyone. And they go through the carotid artery, and that basically through the thigh and up into the head. And they put that in, and that was few months of just horrific pain, horrific headaches as the brain adjusted to this foreign object, and eventually the brain grows around and over it. I think, I'm no brain doctor. It's not rocket.
What?
It's not rocket surgery, but it managed to. She's on a bit of a journey herself with this, but we're thankful that it was found through COVID. Like, COVID saved her. We wouldn't have found it. We wouldn't have known.
Wow. Unless
the headaches were persistent, and she eventually went and got help and sorted it out. But yeah, with Eno, was just, he had these headaches, and unfortunately they couldn't get to him in time.
Fuck, tough period for you.
So mental health has been a challenge this year. Trying to juggle. It was really tough when seeing how incapacitated she was, trying to work through these hours that I do, and that meant, and back to my mum, she came up, was amazing, and then trying to raise two kids, a 4-year-old and a 10-year-old. They were great kids. They were awesome, but then just trying to, and she's trying to run her business, and her business partner Lex is great too, and then people at her work are great, but then trying to make sure that life continues, but also having to deal with that as well was, really, really hard.
Yeah, and put on a brave face for your boys.
Yeah,
Cooper and Miller as well. Fuck, it's a lot. Are you thanks for being so open today. Are you generally quite good at like having open and vulnerable conversations with people?
Yeah, I think so. I think I've learned to be that way, especially working at The Rock, because we do it on a semi-regular basis. But you learn to be more transparent because a problem shared is a problem halved. And we've got a really good environment on our show off air as much as we do on air about it as well. And I just think, I've got really good mates who I can talk to, and they know Emma very well, and it's been really good. Yeah, it's certainly not easy. You don't know how to start that conversation. You don't know, go, you know what, my mental health is not good. You don't expect somebody to say that.
Yeah.
And as soon as they do, you feel you want to drop everything and really go deep. You don't have to, but then you know if somebody is in a way, then you just start to check in a little bit more regularly and frame conversations a little bit better and make sure you are checking in and making sure that there is an open dialogue that's two-way, that's both ways.
Yeah, no, I think the hard thing is like being the bigger person and taking the first step and, starting that sort of vulnerability exchange.
Yeah.
But it is hard. It's like taking that first step is the hardest one. But once you start, and it gives the other person permission, to share their stuff as well.
I don't do it.
Their shit.
And I don't do it, but I mean, I probably should. It's the Americans do it well. They just go to therapy. Not all Americans.
You've never been?
I've never been, but I probably think I should. I've been twice, and because it was like my mental health was really taking a hit a couple of years ago during the COVID lockdowns, and things just were building up. And I did a good job of making sure that I was talking to somebody, but sometimes you don't click with your therapist. And I found this guy, and he was great. I mean, we ended up just talking about the Black Caps. And I was like, I don't know if I'm really should have to pay to talk about the Black Caps.
I normally get paid to talk about the Black Caps.
And the Black Caps, they've caused a lot of mental health problems over the years. They've been great. They won the Test championship.
Yeah,
they've been fantastic lately. But yeah, so going back, I think if you can, and it is a big cost, but if you aren't finding the conversation easy with your whānau or your friends, there may be someone in the professional side of it. Just to have a chat. It doesn't have to be, I've been diagnosed with this, I need to get on these meds, I need to talk to a professional. It doesn't have to be that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I put off going to therapy for years because I was like, I don't know, it's going to be weird, like talking about this stuff to a stranger, and where do you start?
Yeah.
But then you go there and you realise they're the professionals, but it seems like old Black Cap, mate, maybe he was like just easing you into it a bit too slowly.
Yeah, maybe. I think we just worked it out, and it was that time where everything was happening really quickly in the media space, and it was a worry as to whether or not things were going to happen professionally or not. And you just tried to make it work, and that stress of trying to make it work. And we had a baby, well, he was a toddler, and my wife, it was really tough on her, the second pregnancy, because we'd gone on an IVF journey, and thankfully, like literally the last shot of it worked. And then it was like he was born September 3rd in 2019, and then 6 months later we're in lockdown, and it was her juggling a brand new business at the same time. She was literally WhatsApping her business partner the night of giving birth, and like having to, keep up basically a straight face. So yeah, she's an absolute weapon, and the labour and the pregnancy was traumatic because she's a geriatric pregnancy because she's of a certain age. So like all these things happen.
That sounds terrible, by the way.
It does.
What's a geriatric? Like, what was your mid-30s?
I think it's 35 and over. I think
it's so offensive.
It is so offensive. But hey, who would question medical science? But so it just became. It just sort of mounted and mounted and mounted. Yeah, and then I just sort of had to say, hey, no, this is a good option here. I need to have a conversation and spark that chat.
Are you good at sharing with her, or do you?
Oh, could be better. We've got so much going on with our kids and our lives and our careers that we probably don't, and we actually just enjoy just watching TV together. But we're very good at just knowing how it works. Like we should probably do just couples therapy and get back into reconnecting as a couple, because marriage and stress of that and making your lives better and your family happy and stuff like that. We're very lucky. We've got two very good boys, so we're lucky. But if there's problems with your child's learning or they're not socialising at school as much and you're under the pump professionally and, you might be made redundant or your job might be, I just can't, it's just so hard to have to deal with all these societal pressures that we've had to deal with over the last few years.
Yeah, and just like the day-to-day business of adulting, like, having a job, paying your mortgage, paying the bills, like looking after the kids, like the relationship is generally going to be the thing that suffers the most, because that goes on the back burner.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it certainly does, because it's like as soon as you get married, you're just on the set path of away you go, and it's supposed to be a happy family. But it's like a 46% divorce rate in New Zealand. It just doesn't happen. I mean, as well. Like if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. It's no through any fault of your own, or if it's not working, it's not working. And so it's probably quite big of you to say, hey, we've grown apart here, where a lot of people don't, and it's just toxic households. Yeah,
it's challenging though, that's definitely one of the biggest adversities I went through, like marriage breakup, along with the fertility stuff as well. But me and JJ are still great friends.
Yeah.
And we still get on fucking great. And there are times where you think, did we try hard enough? Is that the problem? You have these...
Yeah, but by whose standards? You can always have those regrets as well. But it's like... You didn't set out, you didn't have but you didn't have bullet points. We did
have bullet points.
Yeah. JJ would. She would have had bullet points. She would have organised it.
There was a PDF spreadsheet. Yeah. No, it's great. Oh, thanks for sharing that stuff.
Yeah,
really appreciate it. Okay, let's get back to your early media career. So, Cow TV Dunedin.
Yeah.
So this was I found some clips on YouTube that are still floating around. This is groundbreaking TV. This is sort of like, I suppose, the same sort of parallel with sort of Havoc and Newsboy.
Well, it was around about the same time, and Havoc and Newsboy, they're like, honestly, and Ice TV, they were when we were students, and it was like, especially for me, Ice TV was just so fucking cool. Like, it was just such different stuff. I can't even remember when the slots were. It was like Sunday afternoons or Saturday afternoons or something, or... they jumped around, but Havoc and Newsboy just had that style of humour, which was really, really dry for New Zealand at the time. So, like, Fred Dagg was dry, right? But everybody knew the joke because he was being a character. Whereas Havoc and Newsboy, you really didn't. You were like gay old Gore. Fuck, Gore got angry. It was so good. Back then, you could make those jokes. But so Cow TV was basically taking that, I guess, a little bit of that philosophy and then just using it on Dunedin. And in Dunedin, North Dunedin, as you know, is just like I call it like a biosphere back then, especially when it still had the pubs like Gardy's and the Bowler and Captain Cook and the like. That was just like, there was no need to leave your world because the uni campus was right there. And, our mate Clark Gayford was the producer of Cow TV. It was his internship. He went to broadcasting school in Christchurch after his first year of uni, where I met him. And then he came back and started this show, which was basically all around the Walk of Shame. So, because we were in this biosphere and nobody really had cars and you didn't need to drive anywhere, people on Sunday mornings, maybe Saturday mornings, depends if club rugby was on or not on Saturday, if people went out on Fridays. But Sunday mornings, especially early, 7 to 8, people try and walk home back to their flats from where they'd been the night before, and you'd get like the Walk of Shame, like still looking like, you'd been dragged through the bushes, maybe not literally, but you try and get them on camera, and you can do it because if they're on the street, they're fair game, and you'd have people who would still talk to you, and you'd have people who run, and it was just the guilt. You felt bad chasing them. It was like you're on an episode of Fair Go.
There's a clip I saw on YouTube, and it's Clark saying, no, we love the chase. We love it.
Yeah.
And you've got like an old English taxi or something?
Yeah, that was the Channel 9 taxi. The Channel, was it? Because the Channel 9 was the station. It had nothing to do with Channel 9 in Australia, but it was just Channel 9 in Dunedin, and it's no longer there, unfortunately. But, it would be on, like, it was a half-hour weekly show on student life, and I don't even know what Cow stood for. I don't even know why he called it Cow TV to this day. I think it was like Campus Orientation Weekly, maybe, as an acronym. But it was like this and we had Nightline turn up, and I wasn't the original host. It was a good friend of mine, Marcus Sontag, and Clark had to have like classic female male presenter because you need to appeal to both audiences. And then he went through about 4 presenters female-wise. They'd just flake out. Like they didn't want to do it, or they just went to, away for the weekend when they were shooting. And it was like, and I lived with Marcus, flattered with him. And then one day they were like, fuck, we're still waiting for so-and-so to turn up. And I was like, we've got to do the shoot. And I was like, well, I can help. I can do the shoot because I know Marcus, I know Clark. We flat together. We'd done gags before. And so it became like that. And I don't think Clark was 100% on me doing it because I still think he felt like he needed a female. But luckily for me, the head of programming at Channel 9, well, the head of the station, Ross, he was like, no, these two are great because they know each other and they have a bond and they feed off each other. So that's how that started. And so Cow TV became went from half an hour on a weekday and would do Clark would set up a camera in the corner of the Captain Cook. And then as people came into the dance floor, they'd just start making out. And I was just like, PD, we'll just film them making out. It sounds so creepy now I say it out loud.
PDF cam or something.
Yeah.
PDA
cam. And then would voice over it and just like make all these make out noises and say things, put literally words in their mouths. You can't get away with that now.
No, and I saw a comment on YouTube under one of the things saying, "Oh, is it just?" And it was like from this year, and it was like, "Oh, is it just me, or is this kind of creepy?" And it's like, well, it's a quarter of a century ago, though.
Yeah,
it was fine at the time.
It was fine at the time.
Hasn't aged well, but not everything does.
It's regional television. Who thought that it was still going to be on a video sharing platform like YouTube?
For all to see, quarter of a century later.
Yeah.
And you and Clark, you still in touch? Do you keep in touch?
Yeah, every now and again, just via socials. Yeah, like see him at some random spots. Hung out with him recently. Well, when I say recently, like last year, bumped into him, and it's just crazy to go. It's like that's Clark, but he's the husband of Jacinda Ardern.
It's crazy. I think in terms of like leaders, partners, I don't know if anyone's had a worse go than what he's had, eh? Like, in terms of the rumours and stuff, like him being on home detention and all this other stuff, it's just ludicrous.
Yeah.
And you think it's laughable, but then you realise, no, this is actually someone's fucking life.
Yeah. And now, like the people that start those rumours were empowered by lockdowns and vaccines and 5G, where they weren't just on the fringes anymore. They were like still fringe, but just seeping into everyday conversation. Because it would just be like, oh, did you see that thing on Facebook where XYZ's in trouble? And it was your auntie on Facebook asking a question. And it just fed into itself. And it just became this ugly, ugly rumour that just begat another rumour that begat another rumour. And eventually it just became, they had to address it. That's how messed up it was in New Zealand it still is messed up, to be honest.
Oh, it's completely cooked. So was it after Cow TV? Is that when our paths crossed? Is that when you started at the Edge?
Yeah. So Clark started as your producer, right? And then
because I think he was on one of the very, very early seasons of Treasure Island.
Yeah.
Back before they had celebrities on. So he was just like a regular civilian.
Yeah.
So he was on Treasure Island. And I think he did quite well.
He came second, I think. Was he? And he's like always going to be great at Treasure Island because very resourceful. And he was on Treasure Island, and then he became the producer of the Morning Madhouse on the Edge. And then I finished up at uni. I'd done another year of Cow TV, which had been picked up by Spates as a sponsor, and it went from half an hour weekly to 1 hour every weeknight for a full year, which is where I just basically cut my teeth. Like there was no one telling me really how to do it and how to be a presenter or anything, but I just sort of fashioned a version of myself on TV in Dunedin at 10:30 at night. And that's how I met Stephen from Dunedin, because he'd ring in. And some days Stephen was great, and sometimes he just hissed down the phone at you, as he's prone to do. Happy 50th, Stephen.
Oh, Stephen, we're taking him to LA.
I know, I saw that. It's amazing. That's so generous. That's so cool that you guys sorted that out.
Oh, it's going to be fun. But being at his 50th, which was at the Cobb & Co in Dunedin, like at sort of 10 o'clock at night when it was wrapping up, like his sister was like, have you had a good day, Stephen? He's like, oh, it's probably like you with your 5-year-old. Like, he was like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
She was like, now, Stephen, you've had a lot of sugar today.
Yeah.
I think we need a good night's sleep and then we'll start tomorrow. And it was an interesting insight because we thought, oh, in LA, this is how we're going to have to speak to him. If he gets grumpy, don't speak to him like a 50-year-old, like adult man. Speak to him like he's a young kid.
Yeah, he's such an icon of Dunedin, like he really is. And he was great when I was there, and then to see how you guys had him as a part of your show and how you've just taken him under your wings, basically.
Yeah, well, it's such a big part of his life. You can't just sort of cast him aside. Oh, so I wasn't aware of all that TV experience you had in Dunedin. So then you start at the Edge, and you're like you're like a promo. You were just like putting CDs and DVDs in bags and sending them out,
ordering banner wrap. And
right, so you were completely underutilized.
So
I feel like the promo manager and the program director. I feel like they did you express an interest in what you wanted to do?
Not really. No, I just thought I could get.
You were completely underused, though, eh?
Maybe, but also I had never done radio and never been on radio, never studied radio, never started as a 17-year-old or whatever. How you were in. 2XX?
2XS and
2XS, sorry, 2XS and Palmy, and then just taken under Mike West wing, and then that's how you radio. No one ever showed me this is how you radio. So I probably was just sort of, I'd been hired to do Export Gold summer parties and organise them, and I did them. I executed it relatively well. But then I remember one day Leon, our boss, said to me, right, you're doing the Fat 40, and Stables is away and you're doing the Fat 40 or Fat 30 or whatever it was. And I was like, what does that mean? No one showed me how to record anything or go live. And then I just remember just absolutely cooking it. And I remember Mike Puru having to come in and do it and fix it all on a Saturday afternoon. And this is in Hamilton. So I'd started in Hamilton. It was just like, that probably set me back a long time. In radio.
Oh, that's so unfair, though.
I know, it was like sink or swim, and I sunk like a stone.
Did you? Like, on reflection, was it as bad as what you...
Yeah, because I'd cooked the logs. Everything was out of time. Things were playing over the top of each other. I don't know what they were thinking. I don't know what Leon was thinking. It was a real test for me, and I cooked it.
So you were there for a while, and then... Then you left. You went to Japan to teach English?
Yeah, I went to Japan. I had a mate who had gone to Japan to teach English and then fell in with the stockbroking crowd because he played rugby and they're all expats, and then made a ton of money doing that, so he didn't need to teach English. But he was like, it's a great way to come to Japan on your way to the UK, make some money. And he had this amazing 3-bedroom apartment that his work paid for, like a 10-minute walk from Shibuya Crossing by a place called Yoyogi Park, which is flash as. And I just stayed in this room in his apartment that I didn't have to pay for, and then was there for like 6 months. And I thought, I don't really actually want to go to the UK and just grind it out in a shared space with 12 other people from Ashburton.
In Hammersmith where all the other Kiwis hang out.
And do that. I'd rather go back and try my luck at media one last time. And by then I was in my mid-20s. And I'd already worked with this girl, Claire Gibson, who now lives in London, and she'd been my producer after Clark at Cow TV for that year that we did an hour live every day. And she had just started 3 Sport, which is basically the production side of TV3, that did all the free-to-air rugby and made the sports production shows, not the sports news. That was different. And then so I got a job there, and that based off Cow TV. And John McDonald, who had done basically everything now, had done Dancing with the Stars and all that for TV3.
So one of the big dogs at TV3 for years.
He ran the 3 Sport part of it, and we started a show called Sports Are, and Oscar Kitely, Nathan Rarity were hosts, and I was the reporter that no one knew. Everyone else was famous. There was Dion Nash, there was Kelly Swanson Rowe, there was all these famous people, and then there was me. And all these famous people had all these amazing jobs and stuff. This was one of them. Mandy Smith, now Mandy Barker was one. Like all these great people. And then I was the one who had nothing else except this job. And then I could go and do these incredible overseas trips for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and file these stories. And that wouldn't age because they couldn't do it, because they couldn't take the time to go away for 2 to 3 weeks. And so I got to go to like the Indianapolis 500 and interview Scott Dixon in his rookie season, his first Indy 500. I went and interviewed Kirk Penny, who was in Chicago and about to do the NBA pre-draft camp, and interview him. He'd just come out of Wisconsin. Travis, I can't remember. I want to say Travis Scott, but it's not. He was a baseballer, and he was literally in the minor leagues trying to slug it out and make it into Major League Baseball, which is a great story. So I went to Syracuse, where he was playing in AA baseball, and Travis Wilson it was. And so I did all these stories, and I just made it a little bit cow TV. It was a little bit rock and roll, and we used, actual production music, and it was fast paced, and it was supposed to be slick, and it was slick, thankfully. And it just had a bit of a wink in your eye about it, and yeah, that's when it started really. And I was like, fuck. And I just remember coming back and delivering this Indy 500 story, and these experienced journos and producers at TV3 come up to me and say, well done, and like really good stuff. And I was like, they're like, yeah, I can't believe, have you done this before? I was like, no, I've never done this. I've just got lucky. And so that gave me a lot of confidence that I was on the right path. I'd made the right decision. And that was about 6 months after I got back from Japan. I'd done some Super Rugby storytelling before
and
that.
Then you had that foot on the ladder, and I suppose that's all you needed. So we were talking about before, like you do a good job, and you're nice to be around, and you're polite, and you're courteous, and it's amazing how far it gets you.
And also, but being persistent, because like you said, like, did you really make it known that you wanted to be this at the edge? And I was like, obviously no. But then this time round, John McDonald had so much on his plate. He kept forgetting about me because he had all these other people who were like really important ex-sport stars. And I just kept nagging him and Stu McPherson, who was the producer, to be on the pilot for this and be on the pilot. And I want to do the story. I've got this great idea. Bowles is back, and Bowles is big with these teenagers. And I found the story that 3 News had done about, his name was McElroy, and he was a really good bowler, but he was 19 years old. And I just thought I could juxtaposition it with a bit of NERD, Pharrell Williams music, fast cuts, make it rock and roll, take their track because I didn't need to, it was just a pilot, and then do it, and then put that on the pilot. But the pilot wasn't actually my name. I could see it on the whiteboard. My name wasn't on the rundown. And so I basically just harassed him to do it. And it made the cut because then the execs who commissioned the show were like, oh yeah, we really like that. And that's how close it came. It was like, I could have just been left off the list if I hadn't said anything. So you really got to, if you feel it and you just have to push, and you're being pushy, but you're right for the role that they don't think you are yet.
Yeah, it's a good skill to have, I think, that persistence. It's about having the I suppose, the social awareness to know when you're just like, fucking pain in the ass.
When you're just a punisher. And you're like, people are like, fuck off.
Oh, my God, this guy. Yeah, that's fucking great. And was it Crowd Goes Wild after that?
Yeah, so
now you're doing a Sports 365 or something.
Yeah, so what happened was TV3 had all the free-to-air rights that Sky basically leased to them, which meant that every Saturday night there was a free-to-air game on TV3, but it was 90 minutes after the game had actually kicked off, and then it was full of ads. And then as that, I think basically the public and the diffusion of Sky into households, diffusion of innovation, people slowly became more and more open to buying Sky, and we have one of the highest penetrations of pay TV in the world, especially at that time. The audience was dwindling for the free-to-air rights. So I think they just decided that they weren't going to buy these rights anymore because they couldn't sell them. So TV3 basically, everything just constricted. And John said, look, give Sky a call, and I'll put in a great word for you. I think your resume, you've got your sizzle reel, and they'll know who you are by now, which is great, which is very helpful. And so I rang Sky, and that was like 2005. And Sport 365 was their nightly news show. And it was basically, I just went there as a producer and a reporter. And I was like starting back at the bottom of the ladder again, which is fine because it was like you just can't have a rock and roll ride the whole time. And so we did 365 and sometimes it would make it to air and other times the whole system would just shit itself because they bought a French radio editing software to edit TV on. This vintage Sky back then, go cheap and demand something that isn't set up to do it. And it was called Dallet and it just crashed all the time and things wouldn't happen. And it was a bit of a nightmare. But there was people like Melody Robinson was on it. Brendan Pongiel was hosting it. Yeah, it was like great people. Stephen McIver, obviously. And we all worked on it. And then Sky bought Prime TV. And Prime was owned by the Aussies, and Paul Holmes was on it. Remember when Paul Holmes left?
Yeah, made the big switch. It was massive deal. Like a lot of money. And that hadn't worked out for Paul. I mean, he got paid, so it worked out financially. But the audience didn't go with Paul, which is it was a real telling. It's like far out. Paul Holmes is leaving. Everyone's going to go watch him on Prime. That TV1 audience is not going anywhere. It is locked in. 5 o'clock The Chase nowadays, 6 o'clock One News, no rival to it. 7 o'clock 7 Sharp with Jeremy and Hillary, amazing. 500,000 people still watching linear TV. And back then, like the Paul Holmes experiment didn't work. But Sky bought it because they bought a free-to-air channel. So those free-to-air rights that they were leasing out, they needed those free-to-air rights to bid for the Olympics because you've got to have an element of global sport events on free-to-air because they won't just let everything hide behind a paywall. You have to have a free-to-air channel. So it was a strategic acquisition by John Follett, the CEO, and the board. And then the Paul Holmes thing, I don't think they really wanted to be lumbered with a huge contract. So they axed that, and that's how Crowd Goes Wild came about because John Follett went to Rick Solizzo and said, we need something that showcases Sky Sport to a free-to-air audience, and we need it to be every weeknight, and I want it to be fun and irreverent and a shop window to what we offer. And so Crowd Goes Wild started like that. And Rick basically got the existing budget of Sport 365. So they gassed Sport 365, which didn't go down well with some people in the sport office. And then they took that budget and gave it to Rick and said, this is your Crowd Goes Wild budget. Well, this is your show budget. And you take whoever you want to bring across. And I'd known Rick because I'd done a few things a little bit with Sports Cafe that didn't make it to air, but he knew. And he'd been at TV3 as a consultant in and out with John McDonald. And just right place, right time. Because he said, oh, yeah, I'll bring Andrew across because I think he'll be a great producer for us. And he's got a great eye for being a little bit irreverent. And so he ended up coming up with a show, and he had an idea for Mark Richardson to use him because he'd done this thing with Stephen Fleming where he had been Stephen Fleming was obviously the cricket captain and paid Mark out for asking a really dumb question. And it was the best acting.
It's
so good.
It was so good. It was for Mark's cricket show, and they were filmed it solely for the cricket show that played on Sky because it was his irreverent style of humour as well. But what the mistake was, well, it wasn't a mistake. It was when you're in an OB, everything gets fed into a truck, right? And it's kept in the hard drive of the truck. But what hadn't been shut down was the link to India, because India would buy all the cricket and just stream all the cricket. And somehow it went to air, and they must have thought in India, oh, Mark Richardson's going to interview Stephen Fleming. And somehow got lost in translation that they took this interview, and I don't know if it went live or not, but they played the interview out of Mark getting ripped by Stephen Fleming. And the Indians were like, oh my God, holy shit, Stephen Fleming, the Black Caps captain, is reaming his former teammate and now presenter Mark Richardson. This is shocking. This is great TV. This is amazing. And of course, it wasn't. It was all lost in translation. But it became famous. It went viral before viral was viral. And Rick hired Mark to do that, and then he needed somebody beside him. He needed and so I ended up auditioning all these different people one day in the studio space off-site, and all these different people came through, and I was the one who sat in the other chair asking them questions, manufacturing a bit of banter and ad-libbing. And I remember the phone call, Rick ringing me, and I was in my flat in Grey Lynn, and he said, look, thank you for doing all the auditions, but actually you're the one who's going to be, I think you're the one who should be in the chair. It was literally one of those phone calls that you just dream about. And I never thought, I could be that host, or I could do it, and I'm going to scupper these people's opportunities. It was like, no, that's fine. I'm going to be a producer. I've still got a job in TV. It's fantastic. I'm in at Sky. This is great. This is right up my alley. But I never thought it should be me. I should be the one.
What did he do? Did he like the chemistry or the interplay between you guys? Was it obvious immediately, or? Yeah.
Well, I never had to audition Mark. He already had his mind made up on Mark. I mean, I'm sure like Rick, probably there's variations to his side of the story, of course. But he just saw the way I dealt with these other people and thought he's a good foil and he'll be the straight presenter, but he can hold his own if need be. I think that's how he would say it. And that's how I remember it being conveyed to me. And I was like, fuck, that's awesome. What a dream. And then it started and it was absolutely panned. The papers hated it.
Yeah, it was. It was. I remember seeing you at a mate's barbecue. I think it was at the end of year one, and I was like, hey, this show's really good. And you're like, nah, it's probably going to be cancelled. And here we are, like 17 years later, it's still going. But yeah. How was that time? Was it brutal?
It was a reality check, because in hindsight, they were correct, but we were just trying our best. But there was no regular sports show like ours at a not technically not prime time, but a prime time, a heritage spot at 7 p.m. Like, sports fans are like, shit, that's good. We'll take that. But it wasn't the sports news as you'd expect. It was sports news with a twist is what we called it.
Yeah, comedic twist.
It was like, and we weren't trying to be funny, but we were trying to be funny. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't like 7 Days. It wasn't like, which is a legendary show. It was just trying to get our way through it, different from what you've just seen at 6 p.m. on the sports news. And it fucked a lot of people off, which I'm more than happy with, and it still probably does to this day. But we're part of the furniture now on TV, which is cool.
Yeah, 18 years. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking before. It was it came on, I guess, at a time where sport in New Zealand was very, very serious. You had to sort of have a frown on your forehead about it, and you guys just sport's fun, and you guys made it fun.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like. So, like, the Sunday Star Times just ripped us, and it was like we didn't review that well. And it's like, oh, well. And I took it to heart because, but then the feedback from people who would say, hey, you're the guy from Crow Goes Wild. And you go, yeah. And they'd go, really love the show. And you're like, oh, yeah. Normal people actually like it, not just some grizzled old sports editor.
Yeah, someone who's writing a column in a newspaper, that's not who it's for.
Yeah.
And what about you personally? Like, how long did it take you to sort of find your voice and feel really comfortable?
Yeah,
being the Andrew Mulligan.
The Andrew Mulligan. It was actually the following year, I reckon, and Mark went away for the 2007 Cricket World Cup, and that was in like the Bahamas and the West Indies. So it was more the West Indies, actually, not the Bahamas. But he was away for so long, and that was one of the longest tournaments they've ever had, and it's never been that long. But I had to do the show, obviously, and we had a rotating cast of great people who'd come through, like athletes like Simon Doull, who I've worked with for a love, Tanya Dalton as well, who,
rest in peace.
Yeah, rest in peace, Tanya Dalton. Great athletes, and I really became, it's not your show, but you are the one that these people are relying on you to guide them and direct them and make them feel comfortable and not like show them up, or, they're in a very vulnerable position because it's a hard thing to do a half-hour tally and just sit there. And if you're an ex-athlete, you've never done it before, it's like, so I really found my voice then, which was good. And when Mark came back, I remember having a conversation with him in the car park because Mark, it was all on him previously, and I was there as a little bit of an offsider. And then I said, look, this is going to work if you and I both go to this level and have that. Do they not like each other, or do they like each other? Are they taking the piss? Is it serious? Like, we get to that point, it's like Hudson and Hall type stuff. You know, they don't like each other, but do they like each other? And if we can carry that off every night, I think we'll be on to a winner. Yeah. So that's pretty much how it became, you know, in its glory years of just being. Some shows were good, some shows were great, other shows were just like flush it down the dunny.
It was a great combination, though, eh? It was a fantastic combination. Were you guys? He's an unusual guy, eh, Rigger?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Would you say at any point you were actual friends?
Yeah, I think we were eventually. Like we worked at Radio Sport together, and we weren't close.
I don't know if he's close to many people though, by design.
No, he's not. No, and I mean, I love him for it, and I will always say that yes, Mark and I were friends, but like Macca and Ridgie, they were different people,
Yeah,
and
very
everyone
different
thought,
circles you move.
yeah, and it's like they were great on air together, but it's also just to have a little bit of that doesn't mean that you're all mates off the show, and it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, but he was very different. He would go surfing by himself, and he would go, which was his way of relaxing. He's an active relaxer, so he became a runner. And as you know, like running's a very isolating situation, especially running for fucking 3 hours. And like he'd be like the guy who ran in those toe shoes.
Oh yeah, the Vibram 5 fingers.
Yeah, he became that guy. He became a triathlete. Like he'd do all these things. I was like, far out. We're just different, which worked on air. So it was But yeah, I mean, Mark works for
Forsyth Bar now.
Forsyth Bar now, yeah. So he's left that media world behind. It all came to a very sudden stop after COVID for his projects and stuff, which is really, really hard for him to deal with personally. Because I remember ringing him and checking in and saying, because it was like Today FM shut down, the block got cancelled, everything just became, the AM show before that was, he'd been moved off that. So it was all very hard for him. But being Mark, very resourceful, very good mindset of dealing with failure, because he dealt with failure as a cricketer, because he literally wrote a book called Thinking Negatively, where he learned to deal with failure all the time and turning that into success. Like he started out in Test cricket as a bowler and was shit and became an opening batsman. Like it's one of the great transformations.
Yeah, I had a podcast last week with Dame Julie Christie, and she talks about him being the best person that she's ever worked with, like just in terms of his professionalism and just his workflow and his work process and stuff.
Incredible. Like would manage like Radio Sport in the morning, go and do cricket commentary, and then might have to do some stuff for Crowd at night if he was away. Like just had this hectic schedule at times. And yeah, I remember being told that on the block, like they have a script. Like I was talking to Andy Ellis about this the other day, who now does the Moving Houses show on TV1 that's on. And he said the hardest thing is having to remember a script verbatim and deliver it in a way that feels natural. So you've got not just remember the lines, but deliver and sell the lines down the barrel. And I remember being told by people who worked on the block, said, yeah, Mark was just fucking great. He just wouldn't F around. He knew what he had to do. He rehearsed. And it was a learning curve for him. I remember him telling me that initially it was tough because I didn't realise you had to do that. You couldn't just ad-lib your way through. You had to deliver these lines. And eventually he became, because he's very dedicated, he became really good at it. So yeah, he was, he's a loss to broadcasting. I really think he should be back in broadcasting, but I don't think there's an avenue at the moment for him.
Well, he's doing bits and pieces, of cricket stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's got his toe in the water.
And that's his passion. He loves cricket commentary. Like, if there was anything that he'd want to do the most, there'd be paydays that'd be greater than cricket commentary, but his passion is doing cricket commentary.
So the both end of the day thing, which Holmes has done, Holmes, who else? Hosking, Tony Street. It's like an elite...
Jeremy Wells.
Oh, Jeremy Wells, of course, yeah. Radio Hodaki and Seven Show. Yeah. It's an elite group of like broadcasters that have done that. You've done that for many years.
Yeah, I did that. There was a stint there when I was doing 5 nights a week and 5 nights of radio, which they've done, and it's incredible to think that you can do it for as long as you can. You can't have a lifestyle away from broadcasting that is a party lifestyle because it'll just catch up on you. And it just like you're constantly jet lagged when you do breakfast radio, right? So to be able to manage your day and then peak at the other end of the day, albeit for half an hour, was actually quite a good stress relief. I really embraced it. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the fact that I could do both, and made sure that I was eventually worked out that you need to do exercise, and you just can't rely on coffees and caffeine and herbal supplements or whatever it is, like guarana or ginseng. Like, you really have to have the consummate lifestyle to be able to do that. But I tapered that back when we had Cooper in 2013, because I just wasn't seeing him. I wouldn't see him in the morning, and I wouldn't really see him at night because he was a baby. And then so I just said, look, I'm gonna, and I knew that the Friday night show was the one show where I didn't feel like I had to be on. And I think that it's important for people like Haley Holt and stuff to be able to do it and have an opportunity, because I've been greedy and hogging it for like at least 10 years. So yeah, so I'd step back a little bit. And I remember Sainsbury stepped back a little bit from doing close-up. And so I thought, if I can negotiate that with Rick, and he was really good about it, and it was probably the best thing that I did. And then I just stayed at 4 nights for a long time until COVID hit and we had to reduce the show down. And now it's only 2 nights, Mondays and Thursdays. But I feel like we're at a point now where we should be back to 4 nights. I don't think we need to do a Friday show anymore. Like Super Rugby kickoff times are earlier at 7. And I mean, people aren't watching TV when they are anymore like they were back in the day, but there's still people watching TV. And I think, unfortunately, you know, rest in peace, the project, there's still an opportunity there to do 7 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Certainly not going to take any numbers off 7 Sharp, but I think people will take to it, and I think commercially it's an opportunity as well.
What do you feel? How do you feel about the future of the media landscape?
I was having a conversation yesterday. Name drop again. My friend Melissa Stokes, who is a great newsreader, a great journalist, and she works at TVNZ, and you'll see her pop up on the weekends. She's amazing. She's such a great friend and great sounding board for TV. She's very pragmatic about where TV is going. And we said, like, she feels, and I'm in agreement with her, she feels it's a little bit overblown. I think there's a lot of headwinds, obviously, but I think that's also a state of New Zealand business, and commercially and with budgets. They're just, sure, audiences are leaving. TVNZ's really done a great job of honing their digital strategy, and unfortunately it's come at a cost of a lot of people's jobs. So I just certainly don't want to diminish that, because that's really tough. But I think linear TV will always be there. I think there will always be streamers, but I think the New Zealand audience will always rely on turning on the TV, turning on their Sky box, and it being there all the time. I think there is diffusion of innovation with tablets and phones and how you digest stuff. And you look at iShow Speed this week, you know, 33,000 people around the world watching him.
33 million.
33 million subscribers on YouTube, but 1% of it were active streamers, right?
Oh, okay.
So I could see that number there, and I was like, 33,000, that's a nice show for Crowd Goes Wild. But he's streaming for hours. Like, there'll be iShow Speed and another one like him in 5 years' time doing something different. He won't necessarily be iShow Speed. Maybe in 5 years he'll be doing something different, because that's how the algorithm works, and he will be a factor. But people still watch premium TV. People still want to watch HBO Max. And while people still want their information delivered in certain ways, and like you can watch it you can doom scroll. Eventually you just feel a little bit dumber for doom scrolling.
100%.
Because I doom scroll, and I just actually feel really dumb right now. Yeah, so I do think there's a future for TV in New Zealand. I think the big budget stuff will come back. I think when production houses and funding becomes more aligned, and certainly with news, there's a big debate going on about the companies like Alphabet, Google, Meta paying for news. That's not a conversation there. I'm not really across. But I think there will be big budget shows will come back. Like they'll make the block again eventually. Like Dancing with the Stars will eventually come back, and Celebrity Treasure Island, that's coming back, because I imagine they got really great numbers.
Yeah, if the product's right, then it works. Yeah, I agree. I think maybe they won't be the numbers that they were like 10, 20, 25 years ago. Like Julie Christie talked about some documentaries she did back in the day, like a thing with Rachel Hunter that had like half the country watching or something. Yeah. That's not going to happen, but there's still a place for it. I
mean, she'll have a much better viewpoint of it than obviously I will. But yeah, if she thinks it'll come back,
Yeah, although you're in the trenches, like you're the shop window of all these things, rather than in the back room. What's your one true media love? Like if you had to like just choose one.
Oh yeah, I mean that's such a good question because I don't.
That's a shit question.
It is a shit question because if I say one, the other ones will feel
get jealous.
And they'll get jealous. I mean, I
You love them all equally. They're like your kids.
I know. I mean, I really enjoy basketball commentary with Casey Frank. Like I've been doing it for 15 years now, and Sky don't do the Breakers commentary this season. Hopefully, it'll come back in the future, but it's an ESPN deal. They bought the rights, and it sits on Sky on the ESPN channel. So I understand that part of the business, but I really enjoy I still do the men's league, and not so much this season, but I will next season do the women's league, Toihi Basketball Aotearoa, and I really enjoy just calling basketball games. It's so fun. You don't know what is happening. It's just almost 2 hours of ad-libbing, and it's great. And I really enjoy commentary. It's fun. I love what I do with the Morning Rumble, and it's got 3 great friends. And when when you've got friends on the show, some days it's just like, this is just so much fun. It's a lot of fun. And crowd is just like, I'm so proud of it. I'm so protective of it. It's been such a great ride, and it's so resilient. It's been through... Trying to think, it's been through like 5 or 6 time slot changes over its lifetime. And every time, some people would come in and go, oh, it's going to have to go to 6:30. Oh, it'll be late night crowd. You could swear more. It's like, no one cares if you're swearing or not. It's going to 10 p.m. It's going to 9:30. It's going to come back to 7. It's going to be this, that. And it's just always come back to 7 p.m. because that's where it started. And that's where it always should be. So, yeah, I can't choose, Dom.
Yeah. That was a mean question.
No, but it's a good question. It has to be asked.
Yeah, the breakfast show stuff is incredible, and it's been such a consistent lineup on The Rock for so many years now. And you just get to know, what lanes people are going to take and what jokes they're going to make. And it's a very easy. If you have it on in the background, like Rog plays his part particularly well. If you're listening passively, like you're having a conversation with someone that's on in the background, you feel like you're missing out on something. Yeah,
and that's great because that's what you need to have in radio. You want to be able to have that. Like if you're at the pub and there's a barlina and there's 4 people having fun, you want to like be a part of that because it sounds like they're great people. But also you want to be open enough for them if that person comes up to your barlina. You go, come in, mate. Yeah, we're just talking about this. What do you think? Be open.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the key to radio is just being accessible and approachable and being relevant and making sure that you're talking about the right stuff at the right time.
Yeah. And your show, even though it's a male skewed audience, I feel like it's a show with a big heart. Like you do a lot of charity stuff and you do a lot of good stuff. But how's the whole like woke culture, cancel culture been for you guys? I feel like you guys have a torch on you, undeservedly so. Yeah,
we do. We have and I think that comes from a place where, but way back in the day, when I say back in the day, like the 2000s, when The Rock was really at its peak, and there was Nick and Rog, and it was just like people were like, this is confronting some of the chat that would happen. Then it was just now an unfair stereotype of bogan humour, which we're doing fart jokes, like I said earlier. We're doing, we're
top 5. By the way, the segment I referenced earlier was the top 5 fart things from TikTok or something. And it ended with like a New Zealander that sent you like a voice note of a 34-second fart.
Exactly. And we played it.
But you can do that and then
we'll forget that bit and then look at the fart jokes. And it's like, if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea, but we're not doing anything malicious. And if we stray a little bit, we'll get our hand slapped and we'll get told off. But we very rarely do it, if at all. It's just like perception is reality, unfortunately, for a lot of people. And sometimes it's true, but in our case, it's not. Like we do have a spotlight on us and we're very aware of that as well. And is it fair? It's not for us to say. We just do a consistent job. And thankfully, the numbers back it up. The listeners say that we're their favourite station at times, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah, your ratings are like rock solid.
Yeah, I know.
They're really good. Yeah, but it must piss you guys off. Like, you must see things on Instagram and go, how did he do that and we can't even do it?
Yeah, there are times when they're doing
it seems like an unfair
dick jokes. I was like, oh, wow.
But yeah, maybe it's like a victim of your own success. Like when your ratings are really good and
Yeah.
you're doing the stuff, there's more of a spotlight on you.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a bloody great show, and
Yeah, thank
some of the
you.
stuff you do, you should be like really proud of.
Yeah, thank you. Coming from you, really appreciate that. It's really
Thanks.
good.
Hey, I've got some. How are you going for time?
Yeah, good. Yeah, I'm good.
I got some questions from Instagram. Yeah, it's something that just occurred to me. So we started this chat at 10:30 on a Wednesday morning. So you'd done a breakfast radio show prior to this. Sometimes after a breakfast radio show, like sometimes I'd be fine, but other days I'd feel like I'd ran a marathon or something. It can be quite exhausting.
But then, Dom, you'd go and run a marathon.
No, but how are you feeling now? Like to go from the breakfast radio show to changing the pace a bit and doing a chat like this, like quite a deep chat for a couple of hours.
Yeah, no, it's good. I've really enjoyed it. You don't talk about yourself a whole lot anyway. And like you said, I've only ever done one other with this is with Timprovise, who's a really, really cool guy. I really like what he's done. But I don't mind it. I really, I mean, I don't like talking about myself all the time. But if we're doing a deep dive, I've never really done it before, except that one other time. So this is fine. This is good.
Yeah, and it's nice to reflect on some of the stuff you've done, I think, and the pathway to get there, because it's it wasn't all I don't know, like a perfect running order sort of thing. Like
No.
there was that dip, and there was that time where you must have thought, what the fuck am I doing with my life?
Yeah, especially at the end of Radio Sport there, when after Mark left and he went to the Sound, and he'd been at Radio Sport a while, and it had worn him down, and he was just over it. And at that time, we were doing the show together at night as well, and it was just your sports opinions. We were trying to have fun, and then you just quickly worked out that the audience was always going to be there, and they were just the ones who didn't want it. Well, you'd have that much fun, so that was really taxing. Like that, so it certainly was not a great ride over those years between Radio Sport and then coming back to the Rock, which was such a relief to go back to the Rock. It really was. I really enjoyed coming back and then just building on what we'd done previously before I'd left. Because when I left, I was like the fourth voice, and then there's Rog, Bryce, and Leah, and it was just a situation where I was like, these guys are great. I'm finding my feet. Breakfast radio is quite hard to manufacture something consistently, as you know, as a product every day. But then I've got this opportunity to do something with somebody who I already have a relationship with that is going to be the brand that I'm already familiar with and people are familiar with as well. And then I can do that as we have more of a prominent role. And it worked for a time, and then they shifted the goalposts about 3 times by the time I got there within 6 months. It was just, we're doing this, we're taking this frequency from you, you're playing music now on Radio Sport and breakfast time. It's like, what the fuck?
It's stressful, eh?
Yeah.
It's like knee-jerk reaction stuff, like they
Yeah.
panic. It's I've been in situations where when the ratings are really, really good, you can do anything and they leave you alone.
Yeah.
They don't touch it. But when the ratings are bad, that's when everyone has some input.
Yeah.
So the CEO will come in and say, I was talking to my nieces over the weekend and they reckon you suck because of this.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have to change everything. When ratings are good, it's sweet as.
Oh, exactly. I mean, how many people have had their careers decided by the CEO's partner?
So many.
I've had different conversations with different people who are not CEOs, but just like programming people or this.
Sales,
And
whatever.
then just like, look, I was at the barbecue and Steve says that crowds it just hasn't really done it for him. I was like, and I felt like saying, you know what, you can tell Steve to get fucked.
Yeah, it's like armchair experts.
What are you doing? Like, what are you doing listening to Steve? It's like, but I'm getting the gauge, getting the vibe. It's like, well, make your own decision.
Yeah. Steve says you're not doing enough ice hockey, and that's gonna be the fixer.
Yeah.
Unreal. One thing that I wanted to talk about, I couldn't even find it online. The Juggernaut thing, where you were.
Yeah.
I thought this would have been your most viral moment. It's not on TikTok. It's not on YouTube. It's not on Instagram.
No, it's not. I think Sky in Super Rugby took it down, to be honest. And that must be, that would have to be the reason why you can't find it. That was hilarious because that was the peak of stuff, and especially the Herald having this really acrimonious relationship with Sky, and anything that Sky did, it was written about in a negative light because they were at a point where they weren't allowed to run as much video of sports highlights as they wanted to because, fair enough, Sky pay a lot of money. Like there was one point I remember Stuff had a 15-minute Breakers highlight package on their page. And it's like, that is not fair usage. You cannot have 15 minutes. Someone screen recorded this and just uploaded it to the Stuff website. And so there was this real butting of heads. And then for me to have this viral moment where my earpiece basically had this, what they call audio latency, where it's this microsecond, like this split second, my microphone was unfortunately plugged into the back of the Steadicam when it should have been a wireless mic, which is fed into another unit and has nothing to do with the fact that it's going into the camera, because that creates this cycle where it's just repeating. So it's going in a circle and it's going to the truck, but it's coming back. And so I had this one moment where it's the halftime interview, the player's walking off, and I asked the question and I'm like, fuck, I can hear myself. Is everyone else hearing this? But you have to get the question out. So this part of the brain is going, fuck, what the hell's that? And the other part of the brain is asking the question. And I asked the question, and Dom, it was a fucking good question because the Stormers were getting pumped by the Crusaders like 30-something 3 or 30-something 6. And I was like, how do you stop a juggernaut like the Crusaders? And the Stormers captain, Robbie, he goes, who? Because I'd slurred everything. And then I go, like the Crusaders, hey, and I'm like slurring and like, oh my God, I'm like, am I the only one hearing this? And at the end of the clip, because you can't find it anymore, at the end of the clip, you see me looking off camera and I've got this look on my face like, and I'm looking at the sound person. I'm like, what was that? Did you hear that? And what it turned out is, there was a dead spot at the stadium where the wireless mics don't work, yet Sky have to broadcast from there because it's closest in to the trucks. And they decided the wireless mic wasn't working just before halftime, plugged it into the back of the camera. But anyway, afterwards, my Twitter mentions blew up. So I addressed it and I said, someone asked me, what was that? Have you been drinking? And I just went, I'm drunk AF. Clearly I'm not. And then so the Herald decided to run with must have gone, wow, yeah, something's gone viral here. We'll go to his Twitter and then looked at my Twitter and I said, I'm drunk AF as a reply, not as a statement. And then taking that as literally this is what he is drunk on air and put that up as a story and said I was drunk on air.
Fuck, that's shoddy journalism.
It's so shit. And then they corrected it. And it went viral. And it was like this 24, 48 hour period of just, I ended up making jokes about myself on air, on Twitter and Instagram. And there was egg on the face of the Herald and stuff because it wasn't. It was an audio latency. And people still to this day, though, believe that I was drunk when I do the Juggernaut thing.
Did it make you gun shy after that? Like to make jokes, or do you question what you?
No, it didn't, because it really made me annoyed. But I realised that everything you do is under a microscope, and so you have to be super prepared. I remember having to think, what would I do in the next time? And of course, because one part of my brain is connecting the fact that I sound different, but the other one's asking the questions. If I was just down the barrel talking, I would have ripped my earpiece out and just kept going like that. But because I was doing an interview, I was also trying to deal with the situation. I should have just taken my earpiece out, but I couldn't do 3 things at once, trying to work out what's happening, ask the question, rip the interview. But just take the earpiece out next time. And I have done it.
You've given it a lot of thought. It's a shame it's not around because it's a great moment.
It is a great moment, yeah. We play it on the radio all the time. Yeah, they pay me out about it all the time, yeah.
I've got some Instagram questions here. What has been your most exhilarating moment as a commentator? Is there one?
It would be the Breakers winning the championship in 2015, and Akena Ebekwe hits this fall-away jump shot and to win the game. And I said, pandemonium, absolute saints. And that's probably the most exhilarating thing, where I got to call a championship. And very rarely do commentators get these moments where not only do they get to call a championship, but they get to call a moment that defines a championship. And that was just like, holy shit, that's amazing. I had nothing prepared for a moment like that. Because if you do, you end up sounding like Keith Quinn going, oh, which in itself is iconic because he was fumbling for his notes about what would happen if Jonah scored. I've got a line, and it was something along the lines of all muscle and pump. But he didn't get the line because he dropped the card, and he was going, oh. And that's what happened to him. And you hear in the aftermath of the replay, he gets the line out. He says, yeah, Jonah, all muscle and pump. But anyway,
it's iconic, though.
It is iconic. Exactly, yeah.
If you could cover any sporting event or team in the world, what would it be and why?
Or any sporting team in the world, it would have to be my favourite sporting team is the Golden State Warriors. They are with Steph Curry especially. So I got to cover Team USA at the Paris Olympics, and that would be pretty close to what that answer should be actually, because they were up against in the semi-final against Serbia and the final against France, and they needed Steph Curry to rescue them, basically. And to be able to be there at that moment and be part of that is for work for Sky is, amazing.
What's your take on the future of sports media and how fans consume content?
So fans consume, like I've started a Substack because I just felt like I've had a lot of stuff in my head that I want to get out. And even though I've got avenues where I'm fortunate enough to be able to get it out, I just needed to write some stuff down and just give a little bit of personality to what I think about sport. And so I've just started a Substack. I write semi-regularly, and then I started a podcast on it as well, just talking basketball with Casey Frank, because we really enjoy talking basketball. As you know, the podcast world is highly competitive and really hard to manufacture an income from. And for people like you, Dom, who've done it, is fantastic. But we just like shooting the shit. So I just do that on my Substack. And that's where I think a lot of people have headed. A lot of people are leaving X, formerly Twitter now, because it's just a piece of shit. And
it's so negative.
It's so negative. But then Threads and Blue Sky will also be like that as well, which is unfortunate, but it's just a cycle. Facebook's been like that for a while. I think people just have so many opportunities to look at different ways of consuming sport. It's almost overwhelming for some people. And that's why I think crowd still works.
For aspiring broadcasters or sports commentators, what's the most valuable piece of advice you'd give?
Listen to yourself back. Watch yourself. Pay attention. Take advice from people you trust. And get constructive criticism and learn from it. And I've had to learn it the hard way. And I certainly didn't listen to myself back or watch myself all the time. But I felt like I would be much better off now if I did do it. But also I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't. If I had done it, I might not be where I am now. I might have taken it too literal. If you can, self-analyze, but don't dwell. Don't dwell on a mistake. Don't get down about something that you did. Just move on.
Were you good at asking for help, or like who were your mentors? You mentioned before about the John McDonald story about you like pestering him. But when you got the job, did you ask Rick Salizzo for advice or feedback? Or
Rick was really good at letting Mark and I be Mark and I, but also giving us feedback because he's worked with some of the greats. And he is one of the greats of sports production in New Zealand. He's got great ideas. He's had 2 successful shows in Sports Cafe and Crowd, as well as heaps of other projects. But mentors, it was like I just looked up to people and I studied the way they did things. It wasn't so much I bugged people. I didn't like Nathan Rarere. I really enjoy his style, from Ice TV and through to Sports the way that he and Oscar delivered Sports and the Super Rugby shows that they did as well. I really enjoyed how they, Jeremy Wells, his sense of humour and his delivery. I watched a lot of Sports Centre when I was a kid growing up and wanting to, seeing how they delivered their highlights and what they said and just little bits and pieces like that. So there wasn't really any mentors per se. Tony Johnson's been really good lately. He's reached out about rugby commentary and said, if there's anything I can help with, just let me know. Let's meet up. This is Chew the Fat, which is really cool. And I think Sky's gotten better lately of creating an environment where we're all in the same boat, let's help each other as well, which is cool.
Yeah, Tony Johnson's great, eh? Like,
Oh, yeah.
I've had him on the podcast, and like he's retirement age, and he's still really driven. I've got Nisbo coming next week for one, and he's in his 70s. Salitso, he's been in here a few times, and just the way that he's adapted to YouTube and can see the growth of YouTube and sort of micro audiences in the future, like I find all these guys super inspiring, like given their age and that they're still that driven. It's really cool.
Yeah, Rick was not messing around, but he was doing shows on Facebook Live while he was doing crowd. Like he really saw the power of that audience where you go live and then hopefully like I Show Speed, you get 33 million subscribers.
Yeah, what the fuck?
But also, I don't know if I want to do 6 hours of content every day like that just to get the algorithm serving you. So, I mean, obviously he's a millionaire. He's done so well. I Show Speed, probably Rick is as well, to be honest. But yeah, it's like big returns, big investments too.
I Show Speed. I watched a couple of hours of that the other day. I found it strangely captivating in
I
a
know.
way. Just watching him in a car and talking about whether they're going to go and crash some school on the North Shore.
We inadvertently annoyed I Show Speed fans on Monday talking about I Show Speed. Like they said, you disrespected him. And it's like he's here illegally working on a visa. He's on a holiday visa and he's doing his job. Like that's a great story at the moment. The boomers will be upset that this YouTube star's here. But it's great that the I Show Speed viewers are also watching linear TV.
Yeah,
probably not any longer now that we said that he's he is a YouTube streamer.
Yeah, the I Show Speed highlight for me was probably Dan Hooker giving him a really fucking good hiding.
Don't fuck with Dan Hooker, man. Out of all of them, Dan Hooker is the one you don't want to fight.
He looks so happy when he's punching people.
Dan Hooker is built different. He's amazing. I love Dan Hooker.
What's the weirdest piece of listener feedback you've ever received? Is there anything that springs to mind?
Weirdest piece?
You do develop quite a thick skin, and become immune to it.
Yeah, you do. Just nothing weird. Just when I started at The Rock, you got these messages on Facebook from these listeners who just broke down why you were just shit or what you looked like or how you didn't fit, and you go, oh my God, that's so damning. It's so raw. Like, where are you in your life that you have to feel compelled to? And I get it because you've come onto their radio station, and I'm not the person you would have expected to fill that role. So I get it, but not weird stuff. Yeah, I'd have to have a think about that.
Yeah, that's
But that's part of the hustle.
That's so brutal. I suppose it's like you were talking at the beginning of this chat about Air New Zealand and how like it's it's the national carrier, so people have a sense of ownership. Maybe it's the same with the Rock as well.
It is. Like they're so invested in the brand, which I respect. Then that's great. Like I remember one bit of feedback we got with Mark and I in crowd, and this guy wrote a letter, and he wrote this really well-worded, well-crafted letter, and he used the word to describe me as supercilious, and he was bang on. I was definitely supercilious.
What does that mean?
It means sarcastic because I had to look it up. I had to look up what's but it was an email or a letter? No, it was a letter. He wrote a letter. He typed it up, and then he didn't put a return address on it or anything. That was an email actually, but he used his work email. And on his work email, he had his email footer, and it had his direct dial. So I rang him. On his direct dial, and he answered. And I just said, "G'day, it's Andrew Mulligan here from The Crowd Goes Wild. How are you?" "Yeah, I'm good, thank you." And I was like, "Is this some sort of joke? What is he ringing me here?" And I said, "I just want to talk to you. If you've got a moment, I just want to talk to you about the email you sent me and Mark about our show." He was like, "Oh, well, yeah, okay. What? Well, what part of it?" And he got a little bit defensive, and I just read it out. Like, what part of this don't you understand about our show? Like, we're a piss take. I get it. You might think I'm this X, Y, Z. And he goes, How did you get my direct dial? I said, "You sent it from your work email, and I see you've got a master's degree because it's after your name on your email footer. How dumb are you? You've got a master's degree. Did you not think I'd ring you?" Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Well, that's good. Did he apologise in the end? No.
No,
Wow.
I basically hung up on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fuck. Did you have the shakes afterwards?
Oh, yeah. It was exhilarating. It was so good. And people in the office, in the crowd office were like, "He's ringing him." And they were like getting closer and closer, listening to the conversation.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
what legacy do you hope to leave in the world of broadcasting?
I don't know. Maybe just that he had fun, and that there are people who watched who wanted to do and be like the career that I've had. Yeah, I don't think I really need to feel like I have to leave a legacy per se. I don't think I've ever got into it to leave a legacy, but I'm really proud of the body of work that I've had so far. And so if I've inspired anyone, and there's been people who've reached out who've, not many at all, to be honest, but when they do, it's like, oh, good on you, because I never would have done that. And for you to take the time and to reach out and say kind things and ask questions, then I'm more than happy to return the favour, because good on you, because it's a small market that we operate in, right? And there's not many opportunities. And if you wanted to be a reporter or a journalist, broadcasting school really has to adapt to a changing environment, especially if you're a journo. There's fewer and fewer journalism roles available anymore, and you have to become a content creator like I Show Speed.
Yeah. Well, you're doing the right thing. Like before, when you talked about your Substack stuff, like building up like a personal content creation brand while you're still employed is the best time to do it. Yeah. You've got to go through that pain period of growing it.
Yeah. Like I've got 165 people following me, and 4 of them have actually paid money for me to do it. So now I feel obligated to continue. But it's like
Are you being honest, or are you being self-deprecating about the...
No, that's how many people I have. It's been going since May, and I've only really just dialed in on it last few months, because you're right. You do have to be a brand, but not a brand, but you do have to keep going. And as you say, it's growing pains, but hopefully somebody listening will want to dial in on the Substack and be part of it, because it is a community. Because the ex-Twitter stuff's gone. I used to be really active on that, and now I just regressed. And Instagram, I don't really like talking down the phone, which is ironic, because you talk into a camera or talk into a microphone. I just find that stuff, it's not me. So I just reshare a lot of stuff to my story without having a personal take on stuff. I find that is important, to be able to maintain a little bit of your own self-entity.
Yeah, online. 100%. Well, whatever you're doing, it's working. Oh, is there anything in media that you haven't done that you want to do?
No, not really, to be honest. I'm very lucky in that respect, that I've had a really great career so far, and I'm really proud of it. And I think I'm really happy with how it's going at the moment. Things are always changing. And it's when they change, I learn from people where things haven't worked out, or they have had to pivot and change. And it's obviously really confronting for them. And I want to leave. I don't want to leave with a bad taste in my mouth. And it will. I'll be really disappointed if things don't work out and you lose opportunities. But then just got to carry on and get on with it, and not dwell and not be bitter about that, because you just look back and think, we've had a great time. I've had a great time. I'm very lucky to do what I did. But now it's another door closes, another door opens. And make sure that you sort of move in a direction where you're happy with what you've left behind.
I think that's a great place to end it. It's a great attitude to have.
Yeah, thanks,
Hey,
man.
this has been so much fun today.
It's been like 2 hours.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Yeah, time just goes the way. It's been really good. And thanks for sharing the stuff about about your dad in particular. I'm sure that stuff's not...
there's a lot of people who would listen who've lost a loved one, especially like a father or a mother.
Well, it's something we're all going to face and confront at some point. And it's
and I haven't actually talked about it a whole lot. And I maybe out of respect to mum and my sister, because then, they're dealing with they still process it as well. But on
the flip side of that, I think I don't know. I'm probably projecting here, but when I die, I just wouldn't want to be forgotten, at least not for a while.
Yeah, exactly.
So, by talking about your dad and keeping his memory alive.
Yeah. No, you're right though. It's probably a good thing to keep going, especially for my kids as well. They can listen if they choose to about what their granddad was like, because they never got to meet him, really. My 10-year-old did, but then he was, 2017? So he would have been wouldn't even been 4 when he died. So he barely remembers him. Yeah.
Hey, well, Andrew Mulligan, one of the greats, one of the nice guys.
Thanks, Dom.
Thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thanks for having me, mate. I really appreciate it.